I'll start by introducing myself. I'm Leslie Hinchcliffe. My background is in brand management and innovation strategy. I did my MBA at Kellogg. And this, to my left, is Tom Elden. He is the founder of Origami Capital. The fund was founded back in 2008, and he's also a founding member of the Lakeview Opportunity Fund, a fund of activist funds, and Lakeview Capital Management, a Chicago-based investment firm. He serves on the investment committee of the Irving Harris Foundation, and he was partner at Grosvenor, which is a $24 billion fund of hedge funds. Previously, he held positions at SEI and Sterling, a leveraged buyout firm, and he's a graduate of the University of Chicago and did his MBA at Wharton. He's also a CFA. And Jeff Young, who is a partner at Origami Capital, his principal expertise is in completing complex transactions and building businesses. He founded and later sold Young & Associates, a consulting firm that specializes in wireless infrastructure. And afterwards, he became a private real estate investor and sold his portfolio in 2006. He has a BA from UC Berkeley and a JD from Santa Clara University. So I'll hand it over to Tom.
Thanks, Leslie, and thank you guys for being here today. And Peter, thank you for hosting us. It's great to be here in London, and we pretty much are here to talk to you guys. So thanks for coming. I just want to start off with a quick joke. Story about two guys who are on a camping trip, and they're in their tent when a bear starts to approach the tent, and one of the guys is feverishly putting on his running shoes, and his friend says, "What are you doing putting on running shoes? You're never going to outrun a bear." And his friend says, "I don't have to outrun the bear, I just have to outrun you." So hopefully this contest won't be quite that cutthroat. Anyway, so just to start a little bit of background about Origami, about our group. So we were founded in 2008, and we're based in Chicago. We're a private equity fund by structure. We've purchased $1.3 billion worth of net asset value of stuff that we've acquired, and we have $680 million of capital commitments going forward. And as a business, our focus is on niche investment strategies. So we try to find unusual investment strategies that other people are not employing. And what that means today for us is that we are buying secondary interests in hedge fund side pockets. So basically illiquid components that people want to get cash for today and don't want to wait for 5 or 6 years to get liquidity. Anyway, that's what we're doing today, and we want to talk about what we're going to be doing next, and that's why we're here with you guys. So we think we have some pretty good ideas, but we're really interested to hear your ideas, and we're really interested in you guys as folks who might be interested in coming to work with us to take those ideas forward. So combination of ideas and people. So what is the Origami Challenge? It's a global investment strategy competition. We have $130,000 in cash prizes. And again, the ability to both win prizes and take your idea and implement it with us. So in terms of who's participating in the contest, there are 8 divisions to the contest, and you can see up here the schools that are participating. So we've just done a tour of the US, seeing most of these schools, including Columbia, Chicago, Penn, Harvard, and now London. So those are 6 of the 8 divisions, and then there is 1 division each for people who attend different schools, and 1 division for people who are not students, who are professionals, or really anybody else. And so to break down the prizes, there's a $50,000 grand prize and $10,000 per division. So at each of the divisions, $10,000 and grand prize $50,000. So I know you guys are math whizzes. Anybody in the room for a bar of chocolate want to indicate if somebody in this room wins, what they would win? Yes?
I've got to find the chocolate. Here we go.
So, and I guess on that point, I just want to emphasize that you know, this is we try to design this contest in a way that people would feel like they had a pretty good chance of winning something. We didn't want people to feel like, oh well, if I enter that, there'll be tons of people I'll be competing with and I'll never win. So that's why we have a prize for each division. So if this is the scope of people competing from London Business School, somebody in this room will walk away with at least $10,000, and if the grand prize, then it would be 60, as you pointed out. So those are the prizes. The judges, there are 3 what we call luminary, kind of bigwig judges, and those are, the first one is Tom Ricketts. He and his family bought the Chicago Cubs, baseball team in Chicago, and he's also the chairman of In Capital, a bond firm. And Frank Meyer, who was the founder of Glenwood Capital Partners, a group that was bought by Man Group, and that's a they're here in the UK, and a $50 billion asset management firm. And then the third is Richard Elden, who founded Grosvenor Capital Management, a fund of hedge funds that is now about $20 billion. I know him pretty well. He's also my father, and he's been good enough to help out. And the other 2 are Jeff and me, the 2 bald guys standing in front of you. Anyway, so I think in addition to the prizes and the potential to come work with Origami, I think there's some benefit to getting your ideas in front of some of these kind of major league investors. So guidelines and evaluation, I guess the point I want to make here is that this is a written exercise. We're hoping you'll all participate, and if you do, the way you do that is submit an idea in writing through the website, which is origamichallenege.com, and there will be feedback by email and through the website. And so in terms of things we're looking for, we're looking for you guys to find an opportunity that's at least $100 million in size, that we can put $100 million to work in, and that will last for at least a year. So it needs to have some duration. We're looking for a risk-reward ratio that's reasonable. We're looking for you guys to do some research to show that there's actually an opportunity there. And it has to be something that not only is it a good idea, but it's something we can actually do. In terms of the timeline, I'd focus on 2 dates. There are 2 key dates. One is February 11th, and that is when submissions are due. So you have plenty of time to think about and research this idea. And then the final prize will be announced on May 27th. And if you go to the website, origamichallenege.com, you'll see the intermediate dates along the way. So what types of ideas are we looking for? This, I think, is kind of the key issue we want to talk about with you guys today. This is kind of a subtle point, and so we're really interested in your questions on this. So after this segment, we'll stop and take questions. So first, let's talk about, I think it's relevant to understand what we do so that you can come back with ideas that are relevant for us as an organization. So basically, our strategy is buying dollars for 50 cents. We're a kind of an alternative value investor, and we historically have been buying hard-to-sell assets. And we've been a provider of upfront cash to people who don't want to wait for their money. We've typically tried to focus on niche strategies and invest in areas where other people are not currently investing. And we really are fine with kind of quirky, novel, specialized, obscure backwaters of the financial markets that people don't normally think about. So let's start with some guidelines of ideas, starting with ideas that we are not looking for. So on the screen is a summary of Apple computer stock. This is an example of something we're not interested in. It may be that Apple's trading for $584 a share, but you think it should be trading for $1,000 a share, and it's a screaming buy, and we should all back up the truck and buy as much Apple as we can. You may be right about that, but it's not something we do. Another set of ideas that we're not interested in are startup venture deals. So I know that there are a number of new venture challenges at various business schools, and this is really distinct from that. So we're a fund that is looking for value investments as opposed to a venture capital fund that is looking to fund startups. So if you have a startup in mind, we think that's great, and we encourage you to pursue that. But as you're thinking about it in the context of this contest, think about how, if you have a venture in mind, how you could take your venture and take your knowledge about that area and see how it could apply to a fund like ours where we're trying to buy things at a discount. So the next image you see is the symbol for the Resolution Trust Corporation. And so bring yourself back to 1989. And this is something you guys may or may not be familiar with, but it was an arm of the US government that was selling distressed real estate properties owned by savings and loans. And they had a ton of stuff to sell, and not a lot of people were buying it. So this was an example of a niche investment strategy that was somewhat novel and a way to put large amounts of money to work over what turned out to be 5, 6, or 7 years. And so if you can think of something that's analogous to this in 2012 or 2013, that's something we'd be very interested in. And then, so this is coming back to the idea of investment strategies versus new venture. So we had somebody come to us and say, hey, I've got this great idea for a cosmetics startup. You know, I know a lot about the cosmetics business, and I have this opportunity to start a business. And we think that's great, but we would not fund that business. But if you came to us and said, I know something about how cosmetics work, and you know, for example, Botox may have royalties associated with it, and you guys could go buy the royalties at a discount, that's something we'd be interested in. So again, more ideas that we are interested in. We typically try to start with problems and figure out solutions. And so here are two ideas. So one is, you see the piggy bank. So this is basically deals with two problems at the same time. And these are ideas that people in our group have come up with. And don't try to imitate these ideas. You're going to have your own, but just to give you an idea. So the two problems here are underfunded pension plans and union cost structures. So there are lots of corporate pension plans that are underfunded, and they're also, as a related matter, they also deal with unions that have high cost structures and require the companies to put a lot of money into these pension plans, so basically creating a problem on both fronts. So our idea was to become involved in these situations and kind of broker a three-way deal among us, the union, and the company. And the idea was we would agree to put money into the pension plan. We would negotiate with the unions to get wage concessions, and we would try to get equity from the corporate sponsor. So that was one idea. Another, the stack of books, relates to, so we talked about royalties in the context of cosmetics and drugs. So that exists as a business, buying royalties. So the problem we were looking at with books was that publishers don't always do the best job of maximizing revenues from older titles. So I don't know if you guys have ever seen the book Joy of Cooking. Maybe it was in your mother's kitchen when you were little. It's a somewhat old book that was very popular about how to cook. So the idea would be to go to somebody who is the copyright holder and get purchase their royalties, their revenues, up front, kind of 50 cents on the dollar idea, and work with the publisher and the estate of the author to improve the revenues from the property. So basically do licensing deals to maybe a chain of restaurants called Joy of Cooking, or cooking classes, improve the revenues for everybody, and also have a discounted purchase. So that would be kind of a quirky investment strategy that we would like. So I talked briefly about solving problems. So we wanted to give you guys some problems to think about that we think are ripe for solution. And so they are, One, student loans. I don't know exactly how they work in the UK, but I know certainly in the US, people have said it's the next housing bubble, and it's a huge problem that needs to be addressed. Municipal finance, again, this is an American problem, but may be a problem in Europe as well. Municipalities that are do not have enough resources and have commitments in excess of their resources. Banks, I think everybody has been reading about. They're over-levered and need to unload assets. Similarly, pension plans, unions, and then finally, patent disputes among technology companies. So that gives you an idea of what types of ideas we're looking for. We now want to kind of give you, I guess actually let me stop there and just take questions on types of ideas. Do you guys have anything you want to ask about kind of venture versus investment strategy?
I'd like to know how did, for example, the book idea play out in terms of returns for you guys? Right? We haven't seen it yet.
What have our returns been like so far?
No, her question is the book idea, the book royalty revenue. We haven't seen it yet, so we don't have an answer directly for you.
Okay, excellent. So I'm just trying to think what type of return you guys would expect from something like
Sure.
that. Because it's very long term,
Yeah.
may or may not work, it's negotiations, so it's like a...
So it's a good question. So your question is, just to repeat the question, what kind of returns are we looking for, essentially? And so our assets are basically from private equity investors. So they're looking for private equity rates of return. So kind of mid-teens to mid-20s is what they are looking for on a return on equity basis. So obviously, you can take return on assets and lever them up to get huge return on equity, but we're looking for a reasonable return on assets as well.
Do you have any geographical constraint?
No geographical constraints.
We pass that over to him. Thanks.
Sir?
About the actual investment person, does the fund only put money into action, or do you actually consider like setting up an infrastructure? Let's say in the case of the book, would you be considering setting up a structure to actually sell the books or get more deals, or do you only come up with the money and like there's a company that's already doing the actual business?
So to see if I can summarize, so I think what you're asking is, are we able to bring operational resources to bear where needed, or do those things need to be in place already? And I think the answer is we're willing to put operational resources in place if it's kind of an adjunct to the investment strategy as opposed to an operational business. So if it's operational resources to implement a business, yes. An operating business in and of itself, not. I realize that might be a subtle distinction, but if the focus is putting money to work, then we're interested.
But you wouldn't consider like starting up the structure, just.
So let's take the example of the book example. So we've actually written up this example on the website. So if you go to the website, there's a PDF that provides information about the tournament, and within it there is a section that says sample submission, and if you click on it you'll see a write-up of this specific idea, and in that idea we talk about working with third-party license experts, people who are in the business of getting license deals for book publishers, but there may be a different idea. We've talked about, for example, collecting credit card. I mean, I think this is already being done, but as an example, collecting credit card receivables or buying discounted credit card receivables. That might require a servicing component where you have people try to collect those, and you could say, well, you either farm that out or do it internally, and that's something we would consider. Sir?
Are there any restrictions on the deal size or in terms of money that you are willing to put in the investment?
It's an interesting question. I mean, I think we want to make sure we're putting $100 million to work in the strategy. I think what I would say is be cognizant of the intensity of research required. So if it's a very time-intensive process, then I think we would want the investment sizes to be larger. if it's not time intensive, then they could be smaller. I mean, just think about it from the standpoint if you're running a group of a dozen people and that's kind of the resources you have, and we can always add resources, but think about time intensity would be my comment.
So your time horizon would be 5 to 7 years?
Yeah, as long as 5 to 7 years, if we can get capital back sooner, we'd like it, but we can be patient.
Sir? You also mentioned like in the chart that you are offering like the opportunity to work with you as partners or employees. Just if I have this really good investment idea, like do you also have like some success stories of people who ended up being partnering with you? Or?
This is the first time we've done this, so I can't point to prior experiences with this, but I don't know, Jeff, do you have further comments on that?
I mean, look, I think we're excited about the idea of having somebody who has a brilliant idea come and work with us. This is as much a recruiting opportunity for us as it is an idea challenge for us. People, Google goes out there and asks people to answer tough questions. We're asking you to answer questions that you want answered, and from those analyses we receive, we're looking for a few bright folks. Yep.
Just following up on that, if this is the first year, why did it seem like a good idea now? To have the competition, or what was the?
We were too busy until now. I mean, honestly, we've been so busy since 2008 that we haven't been able to pull our head above water to be able to get to the next thing, and we're now excited to be able to get to the next thing. We're still busy with what we're doing. I mean, I'm running around here in Europe talking to some counterparties while we're also here in London. But that said, we're looking forward to talking to new folks.
Any other questions on idea types of idea strategies?
It seems like you want to be the first one in whichever strategy you implement, but are you open to being kind of a copycat of things that are done on a small scale in more obscure markets?
Absolutely.
Yeah, no question.
It's funny, one thing we did not include in this presentation, but talked about including was content from a book called, it's called Fast Second. Mm-hmm. So there's a book called Fast Second, which advocates exactly that idea of kind of let somebody else try it first and see if it works, and then do it in a bigger and better way. So we're open to that idea.
Let's move on.
Okay. So moving right along. So that's we wanted to kind of clarify the. Also, there's a sign-up sheet in front if anybody hasn't had it yet. We wanted to kind of clarify ideas, and then now give you some tools to come up with ideas. We thought there were some good suggestions in a book by a friend of mine named Mike Maddock. He has a book called Free the Idea Monkey, and he's not an academic, he's a practitioner. He has a consulting firm that helps Fortune 100 companies innovate. And so there is an idea that he focuses on, which is personality type. And he talks about two personality types, idea monkeys and ringleaders. And he thinks it's important to have both of those thought processes or both of those personalities involved in whatever an idea is. So, idea monkey. So this is a nice image expressing an idea monkey, kind of all over the place, full of energy, lots of ideas, a little scatterbrained, very creative, and always kind of up for the new idea. So that's kind of a creative, important part. And then the second part is a ringleader, and that's someone who you can see from the image is very process-oriented, very focused, thinking about feasibility, thinking about logistical problems. You need kind of both the creativity and the discipline, and it's the combination of those two factors. And kind of examples of that, I don't know, you guys are all familiar with the Disney Corporation. Walt Disney is the guy everybody knows. He brought Mickey Mouse to life. He drew it, and I don't know if anybody knows, but he had a brother named Roy Disney, who was the guy who helped commercialize Mickey Mouse and make it a commercial success. Similarly, Wilbur and Orville Wright. Wilbur was the visionary, and Orville was the engineer. Similar relationship between Paul Allen and Bill Gates. Just just kind of see if you guys know of anybody for some chocolate. Can you guys think of any teams of ringleaders and idea monkeys who've been successful?
Only one bar per person, so.
I prefer milk chocolate, so maybe.
Well, we can swap, sure.
One of my example is going way back to Andrew Carnegie and Henry Frick.
Interesting. Okay, great.
Let's see, you want dark. I've got caramel, I've got peanut butter. I don't know what other options. Caramel's excellent.
Any other, you guys know of other kind of teams of successful groups?
I don't remember the name, but there is a founder, and that was the guy who found it. He was very innovative in terms of so he invented the bicycle, and he was very passionate about the engine, and I don't remember the name of it.
Okay. Okay.
Well,
Honda, you
for
said
participating.
Okay. Sir?
Elvis Presley and Colonel Tom Parker.
Okay.
All right. Anyway, well, let's throw a few up there on the wall.
Okay, sure. So, so a couple that we thought of included Michael Eisner at Disney with Frank Wells, Warren Buffett and Charlie Munger, Ron Howard and Brian Grazer, Valentino and his partner, for you guys who are interested in fashion, John Angelo. So just, lots and lots. Show of hands, how many of you guys think you are more like Walt Disney, an idea monkey in this room? So a couple, maybe 3 or 4. And show of hands, how many are ringleaders? A lot more ringleaders, okay. Anyway, so that's kind of a starter, and Jeff will take it from there in terms of thoughts about innovating.
So folks, my job here is to try and talk a little bit about how to come up with ideas, to give you the ability to submit something that is going to be successful. So I'm hoping to be able to help you with that goal. And so the first concept that we're going to talk about, or I'm going to talk about, is what constitutes innovation, or what is innovation. And the thing to think about is the intersection of all those 3 circles there. And the first thing to think about is there a need? What is it that the problem is that you're trying to solve? Then come up with the idea, obviously, to solve that problem. And then the third thing is, how do you communicate it? Or more importantly, in our experience, is there a big enough opportunity set to exploit that need, so to speak? So that really is where that's the intersection of where innovation comes from. So when you're thinking about your ideas, make sure you answer those questions for yourself and for us in the papers that you submit. So in terms of an insight and how you get an insight that you think will be unique and will be the winning idea, think of the following sentence. I, because of a reason, whatever that reason is, what you state the reason, believe that there's this tension or there's this problem that exists. And that's, the example that we've looked at in the past, and it's not necessarily a financial example, but there are plenty of financial examples as well, is I want to buy things online because it's convenient, because I can sit here in class and do it while people talk. But I happen to be in class and I can't actually accept delivery, so I need a place where that delivery can actually be sent while I'm sitting here in class and listening to people speak. So what's the problem, or that you've identified the problem, you've seen the need, what's the solution? The solution is something, have you guys heard of an Amazon locker? Yeah, so the solution is an Amazon locker. So you can take deliveries while you're sitting in class and ordering online. That's an example of innovation. There is a financial innovation that's now represented up on the screen, and that financial innovation that's up on the screen is basically an example of a bunch of cranes, maybe in Miami, I'm not sure where, building condominiums. And this is a 2006 example, much like the RTC example was a 1989 example. And basically there were hundreds of condos being built around the United States. There clearly was a bubble. And the question to ask was, how do you exploit the bubble? How do you short the real estate market? Selling your assets is one answer, but that's a very limited answer. Is there a broader way? And I'm sure has anybody here read The Big Short? Sure, okay, so a few. And so you've heard of the solutions to short the real estate market that existed. And that was an example of a financial insight through credit default swaps and other kind of financial innovations. People were successful at shorting the housing market in 2006. Coming up with something like that would be spectacular, obviously. But to the extent that you have something maybe a little bit less significant, we're still interested in hearing it as well. Next. So this is an example of where, even though there may be a problem and there may be a solution that can solve the problem, the concept of telling the world or the existence of a market is really dubious. So you've got the military guy on the telephone, but that's a unique kind of telephone. That's a satellite telephone. And back in the 1990s, people wanted to be able to speak on the telephone in the Sahara Desert, in the Antarctic, in the Arctic, anywhere where there weren't cell phone towers. And so there was a problem. There was no ability to communicate with people via voice or otherwise from these remote locations. There was a need because people did actually travel to those places. But what was the problem that was presented, and why did Iridium and other similar satellite telephone companies go out of business? For a candy bar. Sir? You're good. I'm glad to hear that.
No, they didn't get the GLONASS. Like, they got outpaced by the normal commercial providers. And the guys, if you guys went into the Antarctic,
right. So there wasn't a big enough market. Bottom line, not enough people used it, and so the businesses, for the cost of putting it together, just didn't work out. Okay, so that's an example of an unsuccessful innovation, even though it was an innovation. So from our perspective, this is a graph that's taken from a book by a Professor Wharton, and it talks about 3 different types of innovation, and this might help you think about different kinds of innovation. There is basically iterative or incremental innovation, and that's the little blue box. The next box is taking an existing technology that already exists or an existing thing, and much like others have discussed here in this room before, applying that to a new arena, and that's an evolutionary innovation. And then, of course, there is a third type of innovation, and that's a revolutionary innovation, where you take an entirely new technology or a new idea and apply it to an area where you may or may not have an existing market. And obviously, in revolutionary ideas, it's the most disruptive, it carries the highest risk, and it potentially carries the highest reward. Evolutionary ideas, are the intermediary step, and incremental ideas are probably pretty easy. Can anybody here give me an example of an incremental type of innovation? Financial, product-based, anything? Smartphones. Say again? Smartphones. That's correct. Smartphones, exactly. So I got to get these in my hands so I don't pass these. You don't want? Fine. Then of an evolutionary type of innovation, anybody have an example? All right, I'll give you one. It's called origami. Tom took the idea of secondary private equity that existed, and he applied it to hedge funds. Took an existing idea, an existing program, and applied it to an entirely new arena, which was hedge funds in 2008. And it's been very successful. So evolutionary ideas can be extraordinarily successful. Anybody have an example of, we talked about it already, but a revolutionary idea?
Espresso.
Say again?
Espresso.
The
machine, espresso.
An espresso machine is revolutionary in what way? Help me.
Just for guests to consume coffee rather than go to Starbucks.
Sure. I'm not sure that's revolutionary. The revolutionary idea that I would think of is, the idea in 2006 of basically shorting the housing market would probably be a revolutionary idea. Because you're not sure where the housing market's going, there's a risk there, et cetera. Another revolutionary product idea that comes to my mind is in 1975, it took 10 to 15 minutes for me to wait for dinner to be prepared, but by 1977, it took 60 seconds. Does anybody know about the revolutionary thing that happened between 75 and 77? What did I hear? That's right, the microwave. My favorite invention. It makes my life a lot easier. So it basically took a new technology to an unproven market, to a market that didn't exist, combined the two, and bam, you had an extraordinary invention and a new market that got created as a result. A revolutionary invention or innovation. Next slide, please. So how do you generate big ideas? What is it that it's required to generate big ideas? Bang your head against a wall, that's one option. The other option is to think about how else you might come up with things. And you know, the first thing we want to tell you, in spite of what your professors may tell you, is that to at least us, plagiarism is okay. And the importance of that, more than anything else, is that it's okay to take ideas from other folks who may have had them and build on them in some way. Improve them, change them, add to them. Do whatever it is that you can do with existing ideas and use those existing ideas to come up with something new. But in addition to reminding you that plagiarism is actually okay, from the book that Tom referred to earlier, there is an acronym in that book called Free the Idea Monkey called SCAMPER. And SCAMPER is all those letters, the 7 letters, and we'll go through a few of these just to give you an idea of maybe other mechanisms to innovate. So if you take the S and substitute, take one thing that exists and substitute something in the middle of it in order to come up with a new idea, a new product, a new something, in this case a new financial innovation. But if you look down in this bottom right-hand section, you see a hamburger. What can you substitute for a hamburger in the middle of a hamburger to come up with a new product? Anybody here have an answer?
Turkey burger, veggie burger.
Perfect. Turkey burger, veggie burger, exactly right. Catch? You got one. Great. Okay, so then the C for combine. What, you know, the idea of taking one existing product or one existing invention and another one and putting them together, bringing those two things together creates a new product. So in the top right, something that's very near and dear to my heart, you have a hair clippers combined with a vacuum so that the two go together, and so when you're shaving your head, which not everybody in this room does, the hair doesn't fall on the floor, it gets sucked up, you don't have to sweep up afterwards. It's a brand new invention, it's called a Flowbee. It's a wonderful invention. Then there's adaptation, and basically taking an existing thing, twisting it a bit, and coming up with something new. And down here we have John, Paul, George, and Ringo, and the reason why they're on the screen is because they had a book much like a book of basically songs that generated royalties. And does anybody here know who purchased that book of songs?
Michael Jackson.
That's right. And what happened to that book of songs? Do you remember after Jackson bought them?
Yeah, he had to sell it, I think, didn't he? 'Cause
he securitized it.
Yeah, he securitized it.
Yeah. So what happened there, and the thing that they did in that is they adapted a book of royalties, or basically royalty rights, and they securitized the royalty rights. So they adapted an existing item, and this is a financial innovation, and they used it to securitize it, and they were, as a result, able to generate more money out of it. And then, of course, basically the little blue pill is up there, and I'm trying to remember, was that put to another use? That's right, P. So the little blue pills, what do they represent? Anybody here know? Come on, yes, you're thinking of the right thing. Yep.
Well, in the younger, I was also saying used for blood pressure, something, and it turned out to be very useful for other things.
That's right, exactly correct. So what happened in Viagra is companies were doing some research on blood pressure and how to moderate blood pressure, and they found that their molecule had different impacts. And so as a result, rather than just continuing to focus on blood pressure, they focused on how they could produce, Pfizer in this case, the little blue pill that everybody knows about. And that's an or putting something to another use. So basically what we want you to think about in this is how you take this acronym and you come up with new innovations. Think about ways and mechanisms to come up with new innovations. Does anybody here have any questions? No? All right. So
there's one behind you.
Well, there's one behind me. Yep.
All the innovation structures are great and good, and you hear about them, but is it just boils down to the genius or the essence of the moment or something?
Does it boil down to the, to the person's genius and or to the kind of the timing? Oftentimes that's true.
I mean, you're more experienced looking for innovation. I'm just putting it out there. If ever this is good, but maybe it's just not that easy.
Well, I mean, I think if it were easy, and I think if it were something that everybody could do, innovation would be happening 24/7 by everybody in this room, right? But we believe that you guys are probably among the smartest that there are out there who probably have new ideas and fresh concepts. You probably look at all these very staid and boring investment companies and say, you guys should do this, and you would never dare go tell somebody that in an interview because they think, well, gosh, they have the corner on all the good ideas. And our perception is quite the opposite, that you guys are the ones who are the fresh thinkers and maybe we're too staid and we're too boring. Other questions that I can possibly answer? Things about origami, about the challenge, about what we can, other issues? Nope? Okay, well then, in summary, basically, remember that we'd like you to register by December 17th, that your submissions are due by February 11th. So that's a really important date, folks, February 11th. That's the deadline. Yes, sir?
For example, when we had a problem with another problem, and we found the innovation answer to that, but there's no capital or working on it, or there's no company for that. And this is kind of generation idea, but we have no investment opportunities on that. How we address this opportunity?
So let me make sure I try and understand the question. So the question is, if there is a problem that you see, and there's no capital to solve the problem because people aren't aware of it, or alternatively they're too uncomfortable with it.
Probably there's no company working on that.
And there's no company working on it. Is that something that we're going to be willing to accept?
Yeah.
Absolutely. In fact, we're interested in it.
But how is that different from the new version?
Well, so to distinguish, and maybe I'm misunderstanding the question. We're not looking to have a new company built around the idea of clean energy and how to develop better solar cells. But if there was a company that needed to be built for property management because there's an opportunity in foreclosed homes in the western United States, and the investment idea is purchasing foreclosed homes in the western United States, but you need somebody to fix the plumbing because you're putting so much money to work, that's an ancillary type of operating business that maybe we can hire or alternatively develop one of the two to do the primary investment thesis, which is put money to work on foreclosed homes. Does that make sense? Did I? Okay. I'm afraid I'm not doing a good job. Yeah.
Sorry. Can I step back a bit on the vision?
Sure.
Do you have any limitation in terms of sectors, geography and sort of related sectors, for example?
Geography.
Any limitation or any sort of like specific or preference, strong preference?
We have a preference for ideas that work in geographies that where they will be successful. So, so to date, we've invested in Asia, we've invested in Latin America, we've invested in opportunities in Eastern Europe. So our geographic focus to date has been pretty broad. So we're not scared by geography. And in terms of sector, we've been across the board in private equity, in real estate, basically in illiquid opportunities. So we believe that where you have to be patient, you get paid. But that's our perspective. And again, going back to the point I made earlier, just because we believe it to be true doesn't mean that we're right. Sir? And then
when you do that, invest in, say, Latin America, how do you manage the currency risk over a 5-year time horizon?
Well, I mean, it's a really good question. So, I mean, I think you have to date.
And would we take that into account, I guess, is where I'll come from.
Absolutely. I think you need to explain it in your submission about how you take that into account and how you manage for the time horizon of, call it 7 years or 5 years or whatever the case may be. But to date, when we've been looking at Latin American investments, which have some notorious time extensions attached to them, we make certain assumptions on the front end about the likely liquidity and what the investment needs to be in order to match our amount of capital invested versus the time horizon. Does that answer your question? Basically, I'll give you a concrete example. Yeah. A concrete example is there was a Colombian bankruptcy in which we are currently invested. And when we went and we looked at paying a certain amount of money for that Colombian bankruptcy, those rights in a Colombian bankruptcy, the manager of that particular bankruptcy situation said to us, it's going to be 12 to 13 months, and then we're going to have our answer, and then another 2 months we'll get paid. And what I thought about when I thought about bankruptcy in the United States, forget about it being in Colombia, was it's double that period of time and then double again for it being in Colombia. And never mind for a minute that you may or may not get paid. So assume a 4-year horizon and assume our cost of capital attached to that, and furthermore assume a certain risk attached to the probability of the outcome you're assuming will occur. So that gives you some sense of how we think about things.
Just on the terms and conditions, presumably if we submit an idea, does that become your intellectual property then? And like how does that work?
So we will never take your idea from the standpoint of you will always have the right to pursue your own idea. We too will have the right to pursue the idea. Our goal is to do it together. because this is as much about recruiting as it is about ideas. So hopefully that's something that will come to be. But yeah, you'll have the right to pursue your own ideas. It's not something you hand over to us irrevocably.
I missed the first part, sorry. This is individual or group competition? Can it be a group also?
We encourage groups, and we're happy to have them.
So in that case, in a group, can there also be non-students?
Yes. Non-students, yes. So long as the person who's submitting is a student of LBS and they're submitting under the LBS umbrella, absolutely.
One thing to add, just so that it's clear, you can participate as an individual, as a group, or both. So multiple entries are allowed, and you can partner up with whoever you want to, as long as the person who registers is a member of their division.
I think I saw other questions or other hands. Maybe I'm wrong. Nope.
And you might want to mention about Twitter and Facebook.
Yeah, so I'll get there. But go back one just if you could, Leslie. So again, submissions are due by the 11th. One back again, if you don't mind. Aha, there we go. The summary. Remember, you need to be a part idea monkey, part ringleader to come up with innovative ideas. Innovation is basically solving a problem, having an insight to solve that problem. The third thing is that there are many different types of innovations: incremental, evolutionary, and revolutionary. Number 4, I like the best. Plagiarism is okay. And then we talked about Scamper. The submissions are due by the 11th of February, and then you wanted to make the point about Twitter and Facebook.
Yeah, so we have a Facebook page and also tweeting on Twitter, so you can get updates. And I don't know, Leslie, do you want to talk about that at all?
Yeah, you can just sign up for those, and we'll be providing info on deadlines and then some useful articles and content as well.
And so we're happy to take other questions after the presentation. There's more food down here. Please eat up. We wouldn't want it to go to waste.
Thank you guys for coming.
Thanks very much for your time.